Going live, going live, going live. This is Anita with Explore Pilates. And as promised, today is going to be the second part of my chat with Michael Johnson and his handle on on Instagram. Let's get the words right. His handle on Instagram is mattfit_NYC. So there's a story in those. Hello there. There is a story in his handle. Oh, hello, Stefan. Good to see you. Has to do with, Matt. A lot of his emphasis has been on exercises on the mat. And as we heard last time, he explores all different kinds of calisthenics and Pilates and does yoga as well, and looks for ways to enhance fitness through exercises that can be done on the mat. So that explains the mat part. Oh, hey Tammy, nice to see you. And also, the underscore NYC explains where he is at the moment, which happens to be New York City. He was originally from Utah, had traveled around, ended up in San Diego for a while, and then is back in New York City. And we got to the point where we were talking about, the main topic of our conversation is the 40 years of Pilates that he has done. And I have very, very skimpy notes. I got three things here. Longevity in training. So just, that can apply to the 40 years that he has done the Pilates. Also the fact that his mother got him into Pilates, and that the first reformer that he experienced was the one that his mother had bought, which is still at her home. And also the fact that this kind of training is ideal for long-term training. So just in terms of athleticism and fitness, it's a mobility system that offers is something that has a long duration, and also is good on the joints and our fascia. We talk about fascia a lot with Michael, and now also with other teachers. So there's an awareness that the movement is helping our fascia, which is going to help us with the strength and the flexibility, and also just the neural connections in our body. So it's more than just flexing a muscle or isolating it, but rather moving the whole system. And the fascia is such an interesting system. Hey, there you are, Michael. Also, this reminds me of injury. By the way, that was one item. Here you are. Okay, we'll go to the conversation now.
Oh, did I? Oh, there
Hey
you are.
everyone, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Let me adjust the height here. I'm good.
Yeah, and I remembered I brought my mug and I was like, I put it down on a soft surface. Don't put it on the glass table.
All right, there we go.
I gotta lift this up too. Oops,
Just kind of get that focus there.
there we
Hi
go.
everyone,
How you doing?
welcome back. I'm good. Anita, how are you?
Good. Did you get a haircut too?
Huh? Good morning, everybody. So what were you talking about? I just heard the last piece there.
Yeah, I was talking about how reaching here for a way to keep the iPad from flipping. Um, a couple of things: longevity, fascia, and injury. I think we had kind of hinted at your injury. You had a pretty big injury, but that also like many injuries along the way, and just how addressing the fascia through Pilates training and is so different from any other type of training or rehab. And that's really all I have. And I'm curious also about this figure Wee Tai Home, whose name we hear about, and supposedly, oh hey Arthur, supposedly he was. I always hear that he was Korean, and I actually did a search and I was like, is his first name Witai or his first name Tehom? Because none of those syllables
I,
ring
I
familiar to
don't,
me as a Korean name.
yeah, I don't know much about Weetai,
Uh-huh.
other than he owned, the studio there
Hmm.
when Romana worked at 56th Street, 160 56th Street.
Okay.
And when I was younger, I'd go there and he was the owner. I mean, that's all
Yeah.
I really know. And then I met him a couple times. I never had a lesson from him.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So I
Did
had,
he train with Romana or Joseph
yeah, I
Pilates?
think so. No, I don't know if Joseph Pilates. I'm not, listen, I don't know. So
Oh, okay.
my experience was with Kim Lee, but Kim Lee,
All right. Yeah.
right? Kim Lee was out of Los Angeles,
Hmm.
and so what is that doing now? Like it's dimming my screen every time I'm like,
And yeah, and I
um,
won't get to see you until I see the playback because I've got all the text. I don't know how to
I
remove them either.
I got you. But Kim Lee was my first teacher, and I think he learned from Ron Fletcher and his
Right.
wife down,
Hmm.
Kim Lee's wife,
Hmm.
and they started a studio, and then that's how they got all the Hollywood people.
Oh, okay.
It was Candace Bergman. I mean, literally, the list goes on. It was crazy.
All those people who had such awesome posture and held themselves so, you know, they just carried themselves in a really, really nice way. There was a lot of presence in just the way that they stood.
That was Kim had a athletic physique that was one
Hmm.
of like a martial artist.
Okay.
Okay, so he's really thin, but just cut, and
Right.
yeah, he was a good trainer. I mean,
Mm.
he changed certain things and everything, but it was really for say volume and reps,
Mm-hmm.
to get some kind of I'm going to change that on my screen for some reason. Sometimes it's just timing out. It's like timing out on us or something, and every time it
I mean,
goes like,
I'm seeing you fine, but on your end, you're seeing that it dims and it gets really dark.
yeah, and then all of a sudden it just fades out.
Hmm.
I've never seen it how to do that. But anyways, Kim taught me, right? And
Okay.
Kim basically would come up to Salt Lake, and he stayed for a while, but he had
Mm.
connections in out Los Angeles. When he was done with Salt Lake, he'd go to Los Angeles. So
Okay.
he was like traveling back and forth as well, way back, and this is like 1983 to 1995. He was going back and forth, back and
Wow.
forth, back and forth.
And air
So
travel was
this
really different
this
back
is
then.
this is this is way back. That was when I was a young boy,
Uh-huh. Cool.
and I started with Romana at Weetai Studio, okay,
Hmm.
in 1986.
Mm.
That's when I started with Romana training, one day a week over there. Yeah, so it's been like what we said, 40 years of practice, right? And what's that look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah.
And that's something what we want to discuss today, right? So
Yep.
I would say 40 years into the practice now, when I look back on it, having had a enthusiasm is really the most important part, and an ambition to learn and
Hmm.
to continue with that has been the say center pin of what kept me wanting to learn, right?
Hmm.
And I didn't give up, even though there was a lot of struggles and a lot of different changes in my life, and periods when I didn't do or practice a lot. It was still there to go do Pilates, right?
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of times as a young man, you want to test your vehicle. So you don't want to spend time in the gym all the time. You want to be outdoors. You want to be,
Right.
testing it out.
Yeah.
You don't certainly don't want to be sitting there, practicing your skill sets. You
Hmm.
want to practice it in real life situations when you're skiing through the trees and
Right.
see if
Yeah.
you know, you know what I mean, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
So even though I had like periods and times where I was like not training, or didn't have a teacher, I was still you know, oh yeah, I need to do that kind of
You
thing.
were applying it through the activities that you were doing.
Yeah, and then it
So,
informs you to what you need when you go back to your studio practice kind of thing.
uh-huh, uh-huh,
And, as far as the method and you're growing and learning and understand how to perform this thing, that would probably be my, you know, 40 years of practice. What do you do, And it's changed, it's
uh-huh,
changed a lot. Just like the exercise when I first walked in the studio with Ramana and Weetai, I saw how she taught then. It
uh-huh.
changed 12 years later when I decided to become a teacher. It's
Right.
changed even now. I don't even recognize Pilates now.
Uh-huh.
I don't even recognize some of the things like that these classical people are doing.
Mm.
It seems
I
to be
see.
a specialized ballet school,
Mm.
like that kind of thing that got infiltrated and then all of a sudden it becomes such this performance based thing. I don't even know what they're doing sometimes. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and maybe that's because I never made that connection because I'm not a dancer, and those things aren't important in athletics. They are probably specifically to that sport.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've changed the way like 5 years into it, I thought this is really important. If you listen to a Pilatesology tape, was taped like in 2011. I've changed some of my point of views and maybe how I cue things now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Still the
Yeah.
same emphasis, same exercise.
You
Like,
just get deeper inside of it, and you
hmm
see like the fibers up close rather than the forest, the whole
that's
forest.
one way to look at it. Yeah, I think just like even the cues and what I think is important in the exercises have changed.
Mm-hmm.
I, obviously, I've grown from the method and tremendously in terms
Mm-hmm.
of my body health over time.
Mm-hmm.
Being my age at 56, I still have a very flexible body, one that you could say is like an 18-year-old,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like that. So in that sense, it was at the longevity of it's helped me maintain that kind of in athleticism or range, you want to call it,
Yeah.
if that's a thing, for you, and that's what you're after. The thing that it didn't do for me, okay, was I didn't, I felt stronger in a way that was like a body connection,
Mm-hmm.
but not pure strength,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
not
because
like,
you had other
not like,
venues for that.
yeah, not like deadlifting 400 pounds. You're not going to have
Right.
that kind of
Right.
experience in
Mm-hmm.
this method, right? It's not
Yeah.
that kind of density of a type
Mm-hmm.
of a program, right? This is more of a motor control, you know, program, basically under tension,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Joseph Pilates was the tensometer king, is what I call him.
Right.
Like the tensometer, that little, if you look in the old archive photos, there was a device that was like had two handles on it and it had a tube and a spring inside the tube.
Right.
And you could squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it. And
Uh-huh.
if you look at those old pictures of him all like, posing like he's in a bodybuilding contest,
Right.
and he's holding that tensometer up next to him like this. And
Yeah.
I think that was the premise of Joseph Pilates' work, was that pre-tensioning, which was the fascial control that you talked about, and then move.
Mm-hmm.
So my 40-year understanding now has even changed even more now. Now that I've
Mm.
practiced for 40 years and kind of
Mm.
was practicing this fascia thing, and I didn't understand it at first either. You
Right.
know, you
Because
didn't
you
understand.
learn from there are so many layers too. Like
Mm-hmm.
where do the feet go? Where does the and then like you learn the moves and then you learn, oh wait a second, it's actually a balancing act. Like there's stability and mobility, but it's not only that. It's you can go even deeper with that. It's the breath. It's like revitalizing the whole body, the whole system.
I call it like rehydrating the fascia.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so you're actually conditioning this type of feature that's within us all. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
what Joseph Pilates meant by return to life. And if you can condition this
Mm-hmm.
fascial, you know, it will give you control, it will give you range, it will give you these things, and you'll feel like your body's buoyant and return to life.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of sense, you can't get that from muscle. You can get a little bit from muscle training, but it's not the same feeling
Mm-hmm.
at all,
Right.
right? And so I think from my perspective that's the hallmark of his training was this like tensioning
Mm-hmm.
and then move, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
what that we talked a little bit about. The brain, what fights for stability first,
Mm-hmm.
pre-tensioning. Now you
Mm-hmm.
can exhibit power. And
Right.
if it doesn't have that stability, you compensate millions of compensations everywhere to perform that power move. And
Right.
so I believe now practicing with him, his work is that it just keeps growing exponentially now because now you have
Mm-hmm.
to practice this kind of technique where maybe that part was lost in translation. And I think through all methods and teachers, there's a part of everything that gets lost and then rediscovered
Well,
through practice. That's what I wanted
yeah.
to say to you.
Yeah. And
So
tension also
even though your
has
teacher didn't teach you that, but through
mm-hmm.
your own practice and discovery, you can,
Yeah.
you know, like your handle says, explore Pilates again and again.
Right.
You know, like, and each
Well,
time I've
yeah.
changed my perspective there in the 40 years, there was another exploration that went
Mm-hmm.
with that, holding that mindset or make the glutes or whatever your emphasis was that time
Right.
period, you know,
Uh-huh.
that you learn something and then it applied to your practice overall. You may not
Mm-hmm.
have that same emphasis in your
Mm-hmm.
teaching, but you'll grow through those phases. It's like opening a door to the house and it's the purple room.
Right.
And then you got to feel what purple feels like on your body, right? And then you go close that door and then you find a new, like, you know, hamstring, and that's the red door, you know?
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
oh,
Or
my
and then you find
hamstrings
out,
are
wait a
right.
second, maybe we could look through the whole house, unify the style of the whole house, and maybe corridors are not wasted space, but they also have to reflect the style of the room
Yeah,
and your
they just
entry and your
that
exterior.
inherent experience is like say in your DNA, right? You can't
Yeah.
take that away, that experiential learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so like when you first learn, you learn the script, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a stitch, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to have that repeated to you a couple of times, and then you pass your
Right.
600-hour test, and then you go out into the studio and you try this thing that you're trying to repeat, right?
Right.
And then 5 years into it, you start to see the room, you know?
It's like, wait
There's,
a second.
wait a second, there's more to this, you know? And hopefully 5 to 10 years, you get really involved in like including the whole room now. And
Mm-hmm.
then 10 years into it, you see what doesn't work for you in your perspectives.
Right.
You
Yeah.
see, and then you have to really hone down on some of these things and work on your workspace, as I call them, right?
Mm-hmm.
To increase your flexibility, increase the strength, increase your range, increase whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
then, gosh, 10 to 20 years, 20 years into it, you really start feeling your body remodel through this Pilates fascial remodeling.
Mm.
And you feel this type of like, oh my gosh, yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if we told anybody marketing, like literally, if you lifted weights for 20 years, you'd be big. If
Mm-hmm.
you did yoga for 20 years, you'd be, putting your foot behind your head. If you, right, you
Yeah.
do Pilates for 20 years, you're going to have this connectivity that we talk about, connections,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
This connective tissue, right? You're trying to move the body as a whole unit.
Mm-hmm.
And not try to part it out all the time. And I think that's where people get lost in that 10 to 20 year. If you're just still trying to just move this muscle,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
That's not Pilates. Pilates is a
Mm-hmm.
holistic movement. It's the
Mm-hmm.
entire body, not segmentally. So I think
Exactly.
if you get caught up in muscle theories like segmentally or just work
Mm-hmm.
this bicep, you will miss the results.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that is where
You'll
people
get
say, yeah, you'll
you'll
get
get results
results.
of a type, but not
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
Joseph Pilates was en- envisioning.
Yeah,
That
in
it's
no way am I trying to suggest that there's this super right way and that I have this way because I'm a classical Pilates teacher and now I'm
no,
going to oppress you because I have this specialized information that doesn't exist, but I'm going to market it out to you because you know what? I'm going to use that against you. No,
right.
that doesn't exist either.
Mm-hmm.
Just because your experiential thing, don't go oppress others because you think you have something. And
Yeah.
I think that's a bravado of 20, 25 years into it as well.
Mm.
Okay. And then because you've built your business or you've done whatever and you're at the top of your
Right.
game and now you're world traveling and, you're helping a lot of people and people are attracted to you because you think you have this thing. About 30 years into this thing, I had the most hardest injury of my life. I had a brainstem injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all that really, all those exercises and classes just prepared me for the fall down so I
Mm.
could help myself get back up, and it's so interesting because when you have such a bad injury like I did, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's literally, I would turn my head, go into vertigo. I'd read the
Wow.
newspaper, go into vertigo. I get on a bus and see the trees go down the trail like this, I'd go into vertigo.
Wow.
I could not function.
Mm-hmm.
I had
So,
to relearn everything again.
yeah. Do you want to
Uh,
describe to us what your injury consisted of? Like what happened?
So I was trying to catch a subway stair, right? I was running down the escalator stairs, not the staircase.
Mm.
And it was a rainy day, and there must have been water in the stairs or water in my, and I slipped. And
Right.
next thing I know, I see my feet out here. And then I come back and I hit my head on the back right here at my
Oh,
C1, right on the corner of the staircase.
but those are escalator stairs you're talking
Yeah,
about, or
yeah,
the steps that are
yeah.
to
So
the
I was
side of
wearing a
the
coat,
escalator.
so it was a raincoat, but it hit me here.
Okay.
And as soon as it hit me here, I went numb on the entire right side of my body,
Wow.
like instantly numb. Like I could feel it, just like I couldn't feel my hands. I
Right.
had not really lost consciousness, but I knew I was injured because I wanted to throw up.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever been injured really bad, it's the first kind of sign that happens to you. You feel like
Mm.
your stomach goes like this, and you're like, oh my God, I'm really hurt.
Wow.
Because I've had those kind of incidents before, this injury, right? So
Wow.
being an athlete, I just kind of, I kind of got up and I got home and I was like, wow, and I don't know, I can't really remember, but I woke up at 4 in the morning with this loud sound in my ear, and
Mm.
because I thought I'd damaged something in there, and
Yeah.
because I heard this loud sound, it was like this, and I thought it was an
Wow.
alarm, or I thought it was something going on, or a fire alarm or something,
Mm-hmm.
and it was inside my head. So I tried to get up, and I couldn't walk. I was in
Mm.
complete vertigo.
Wow.
And I had not know what was happening to me. So I went to the hospital and I basically got misdiagnosed.
Mm.
Told me I had Meniere's disease after a head injury. And I literally tried to fight that diagnosis, and that was the start of my recovery, was to basically being misdiagnosed and nobody believing me that I'd hit my head.
Oh.
So,
Th-
it was me, it's interesting psychologically, you don't want to be broken.
mm-hmm.
That's what
Right.
everybody goes. That's that conversation goes on
Mm.
in their head when they get hurt. Nobody wants to feel broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I literally, in 2011, when we first started shooting Pilatesology videos, I had no business being in that room. That was
Wow.
me just off the sheer survival of 30 years of practice. I had that in my
Mm.
body.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in the hospital 2 months before that. I was in the hospital 3 months for that with complete 22-hour vertigo episodes. So my life had changed dramatically 10 years ago when I literally lost all function of, or me trying to, I'd work out, go into vertigo. I was throw up continuously for hours and hours and hours and things like this. So with
Oh
that
my
said,
God.
my practice changed, and I, for the last 10 years, have been trying to recover this C1 rotation where I got hit
Mm-hmm.
so bad. And when the C1 rotates, it basically compresses your spinal cord.
Mm-hmm.
And your brainstem back there, what controls everything.
Mm-hmm.
So for the last 10 years, I've had spine pain that's just like literally like someone grabbed a pair of pliers and grabbed your spinal cord.
Oh, right.
Not your muscles, your spinal cord.
Yeah.
And it was just such an uncomfortable feeling that Pilates, yoga, none of it helped
Mm.
until I could get a doc or an osteopath to manipulate the pressure off the brainstem.
Wow.
So now
And
40
that's just a
years,
delicate operation as well.
no
I mean,
operation. It was just
like
chiropractic
a,
work. Yeah, it was
yeah,
very precise
maneuver.
chiropractic. Yeah, done
Yeah.
by guided x-rays and things like that, and so anyways, we're starting to get this to stabilize, and I started working out again. And then with my physical therapy, at the same time, I had right hip surgery, had a labral tear in my right hip.
Right.
And one of the physical therapists there saw how maybe unfit I was after 30 years of practice of yoga and Pilates, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we basically, in order to remap my body, because that's what I wanted to do was Pilates, not like go lift barbells and things in my condition, because it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
I basically went through the whole method again and relearned everything with a more functional point of view rather than, say, our point of view or classical point of view or dancer point of view or whatever you want to call that point of view or whatever influence our teachers had. I
The
saw
prescriptive point of view.
yeah,
Like,
I
this is how you
saw
do it, this is how it's done.
then I saw basically and went through those exercises painfully with that person for 2 years
Mm.
and remapped my body to make it relearn. And a lot of that was functional range conditioning before it was so popular.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it was just mobility work to try to understand function. What does this joint do?
Mm-hmm.
What does your spine do? And learning the human function patterns. And then I saw the brilliance of Joseph Pilates, because we have basically a template of training wheels for mobility and function in our method. And then I started to see myth versus what? Myth versus function. So in every exercise method, there's a functional movement. Then you get to see the myth of how choreography and everything messed up this very functional movement in your body. You see what I mean? And then you start to see how mythology and people's, like I was at 20 years into the practice, thought this was so important because my teacher told me, but it doesn't apply to fitness whatsoever in any way, shape, or form, or any function. And so that's what changed my practice, like more so than anything, was like, okay, yeah, I had 30 years of investment into this, but that investment didn't pay off for me. And so it was a huge sobriety moment for me. Yeah, huge. And so I may be a square peg in a round hole, but from my experience, I'm correct.
Yeah.
If I go and speak to people who are still believing these other stuff, then I'm a square peg in a round hole.
Right.
Because they want to go dance on the reformer. Right? So they don't want function. They just want this choreography and this thing that goes.
Like, that speaks more, like you gave the analogy of the yogi who teaches all these different pupils,
Mm-hmm.
and it's more a reflection of where they came from and their teaching and their experience, but then to then package that into a teacher training program and say, hand it off to somebody who comes from a
This is the
different
way, right?
background,
Yeah.
then we run into some problems. And um, also, like, if you just really go through, and actually, somebody had told me to do this, to go through Return to Life and
Mhm.
literally go through every single instruction, then you'll see what's
Verbatim, yeah.
what. Yeah,
Good.
and then I realized, oh, like that's not what I learned.
Right.
The single leg circle took me 2 days to figure out what is going on here.
So, with
But
that said, I just basically, being injured, I rescinded from, teaching a lot because,
right.
when you're injured, you feel like you're less than, or you're not up to the rest of the speed, or of everybody, or, and that's okay. You know, um, I
Yeah.
feel more confident today in my practice and what I know with the Pilates method through experiential and functional, classical, contemporary. I could teach any of it, right? So I
Right.
feel more well-rounded from my experience, more or less
Hmm.
than,
Yeah.
from that. And it's enriched me, you know, your experience enriches you more than, say, a philosophy on it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to say.
It
And through
always has
your,
to be a living practice. It has to be something that you've experienced in your own, like with your own skin and
I
gone
was,
through it.
I would suggest this for anybody who practices movement practice.
Hmm.
Have a home practice,
Right.
have a community practice,
Hmm.
and explore other teachers,
Hmm.
right? So you have your private practice, you have your community practice, you have, your home practice.
Right. Yep.
So I think that's really important for people to understand because your community people, just go and join and participate and,
Right. Yep.
pick up a gem, pick up whatever. Somebody might have a perspective or a way of saying something that really is like, pooh,
Right.
or, to get your buttons going. But then you
Like
get
your
to,
Monday class, for instance.
yeah, right? It's all skills and drills. Like in our Monday class, for anybody's listening to this later, is that my style of teaching is to unpack the exercises and to learn at what body part is being asked to be challenged in this particular movement pattern. And
Yep.
then I'll give you kind of skills and drills to exercise your body in those fashions to get those facets or those joints or that workspace facilitated. And then at the end, I'm like, this is Joseph Pilates' move. Now we facilitated it. Now let's do Joe's work, right? So I think that's a great way to teach because you're teaching someone function, you're teaching movement patterns and how to
Hmm.
regroove those I'll say neural
Hmm.
patterns so that you get better performance out of your body, which is basically what we're trying to do, right? Re-educate
Right.
ourselves. And
Yeah.
so I got away from the old like this is next, trying to make it an high intensity interval workout program like a lot of classical Pilates teachers have done to keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
I don't do that. What I want to do is unpack it, make you have an experience, let your brain
Right.
wrestle with this, and maybe describe to you what you might perhaps feel one day, not
Right.
prescribe to you. This is
What
the
you should
way
be
to do
feeling.
this. Yeah.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
got more of a, that's maturity, I would say, at 40 years in the practice. I want you to have an experience so that you enrich yourself, so that you
Yeah.
have this self discovery, and that you can go out and interpret this any way you want because of your own experience.
Yeah.
You see, and that's what's going to be the wellspring that germinates all these ideas and connections and things for you. And I'll allow
Mm.
you to have that, not for me to determine for you what's going on in your joint space.
So I have a question. Do you have that similar journey? Did you have that similar journey with calisthenics and yoga?
Different,
I just, yeah.
different teachers, different emphasis, right?
Hmm.
Rodney Yee was probably the best and still is one of the best male yoga teachers that is a maestro. That kid knows the body very well. Wow, what a great teacher. Just when you go take a class like from someone like that, or someone who's a really good Pilates teacher, and I'll mention one in a second, that you get your instrument to be played in a way that's so harmonious to you, right? You're the instrument. They're the orchestrator. And you participate in that, right? And there are a few really good teachers like that can lead you into that space and make you kind of get into your own self and that meditation or whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I had a different experience. I worked with Dharma Mitra for long time, 9-10 years, and Dharma Mitra was the guy who made the 908 yoga pose poster.
Okay.
All 908 poses, right?
Whoa.
Yeah. He had done that from a tripod and a clicker in his mouth, and he did it for his guru.
Okay.
As a dedication to thank you to his practice. So there was 908 variations of every yoga pose in the world. Okay. And he had achieved that, every single variation and pose, right?
Yeah.
And so I went and studied with that guy and literally side by side and practiced with him. And for me, that was an incredible journey because I'm a visual learner.
Right.
So you have to understand how you learn. I'm not a auditorial learner. Okay. So because as a young kid and I have tinnitus, and I have all these, so hearing for me is a very difficult, thing, right? Just something that I'm challenged with. So practicing with Dharma was the most revealing thing I'd ever seen, is because all of his yoga pose poster looks like Pilates positions.
Okay.
And practicing with him and seeing him do it and practice side by side and seeing the progressions and where you could go, my body changed more in his 9 years than any other person I had ever practiced with, which made my Pilates that much better because now I was flexible like the dancers. You see what I'm saying? And it wasn't Pilates that got me there.
Right.
It was
It's
yoga.
interesting because Pilates then becomes this sort of auxiliary mobility work that you do for other stuff. And yet it's something that was enriched at the same time by other stuff, other practices that you had followed, like the yoga. And then the calisthenics come after the yoga.
Yep. Because then I started seeing that all the heart of yoga poses were calisthenics and gymnastics, right? And the heart of Pilates movements is calisthenics and gymnastics. So then I wanted to learn from a calisthenic teacher.
So there is this separate discipline that's just calisthenics, and
It's
they
all
have
the same body positioning though. It's just harder because now you have to, like, instead of doing long stretch with your feet on the reformer, now do plank and now lift your feet off the ground and hold yourself in the air. So the long stretch is just basically planche training. Training wheels for planche or whatever you want to call it. So I started to make those connections, and I started like, oh wow, these are just training wheels for that exercise.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like if you have that perspective of where Pilates falls in terms of movement training and strength training, like is it an end in itself, or is it, like you say, the training wheels that's going to take you somewhere else?
It's an auxiliary program because the progressions are you to have these inherent, like, body positions, but here is the more challenge.
Right.
It's like when we're hanging from the Cadillac, right? And your feet are out in the trapeze bar. All the calisthenic boys can hold the trapeze bar, but not put their feet in the trapeze bar. They can just hold their body straight while they're hanging from a bar. So imagine that next time you're in the hanging on the bar, right? Imagine that you could just lift your whole body off the trapeze bar with your arm strength. That's
It's just a
calisthenics.
reference point. It's not a
Yeah,
resting point.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what I'd seen over, and is basically how the humans have organized the specialized Pilates program,
Mhm.
where prior say Ramana age, 1970 or so,
Mhm.
Pilates was taught by Crayola Tier, was taught by Kathy Grant, was taught by Joseph Pilates himself up to 1960. And even in his day, there were different people doing his stuff.
Right.
Okay. In
Yeah.
in in one of the books I read, Lolita's book, Lolita practiced with Crayola Tier for a year or two and didn't even know the inventor, Joseph Pilates, was in the same city down the block. Crayola Tier didn't
Yes.
tell her until she went
Pretty
to Kathy
wild.
Grant, and Kathy Grant brought her to Joseph Pilates, right? So
Okay.
even in his day, there were people teaching his method differently than him.
Right. Well, I mean, was that just natural outgrowth of the fact that they're different
Listen,
bodies?
it's like
Or did they?
I call it the Vidal Salon, model. If you go to
Mhm.
Vidal Sassoon to learn how to cut hair, right,
Mhm.
you learn a certain way, but then eventually you run down and open up your own studio and teach your way,
Mhm.
or you cut hair your way,
Right.
right? So this is kind of the same thing that happened in Joe's days.
Mm.
So what we've seen is what the humans, how they've repackaged and packaged and repackaged and packaged, and then trend, and then it got popular, and then they repackaged, and then they made a training program, and then we're all
Right.
supposed to do it this way. And really all along it was just training wheels for all these calisthenic and gymnastic moves.
Right. Right. So it's like almost
Where
connected.
did we learn from people who were ballet dancers that didn't know gymnastics progressions? Probably.
Mhm.
Yeah, they were ballet dancers. They didn't study that stuff, right? So in the end, it just sobered me up even more.
Mhm.
Because 35 years of this is interesting. I always talk about this. Exercise systems are measured.
Right.
It's not your personal view. So if your personal view over the last 35 years was to do Pilates this certain way, well, what's your measure? What does your body feel like? What can you do? Are you strong? Are you weak? Are you still babying
Mhm.
that knee? Did you fix it? You
Uh,
know, those are all measures, right? And
yeah. Right.
if your method didn't help you get through that, then there's
Yeah.
something wrong.
Mhm.
There's something seriously wrong.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So that's where I hold the integrity of all methods, whether it be
Mhm.
Joseph Pilates or yoga that I teach or anything. I wanted to make a lasting change on your nervous system so that it will inform your body to perform differently. Ilaria, wow, I haven't seen her in a long time. Does that make sense, you guys? So I'm open
Yeah.
to a lot of stimulus and tools to help you become better. And I found that Joseph Pilates method at the beginning of all of our nervous system is a great program to help you learn motor control.
Yeah.
And most people don't have motor control from the very beginning of the range to the very end range, right? There's some pattern there. And so that we can help regroove or reinform this neural pattern that you have in this groove of your shoulder joint. And I think Joseph Pilates' method, the tensioning, the fascial components of it, help this whole region holistically and segmentally to
Mhm.
irradiate energy into those workspaces to make you feel better. And that's, he did a wonderful job. He really did.
I,
There's a
I
it's
agree.
it's basically 1920s German gymnastics basically. And
Yes.
if you look at an extension of that and you go to Germany, you'll see the parks, all the calisthenic parks that are
Mhm.
everywhere in Germany,
Right.
right? You're going to see the Pilates exercise in those German parks because it came out of German gymnastics.
Oh, okay.
You see what I'm getting at? The culture's still there.
Right.
It's still deep within their culture.
Mhm.
And that's why you see all the calisthenic bars and the push-up bars and the sit-up bars and all these gyms in Germany and all the kids doing these exercises. That's
Right.
Pilates.
Yeah. I have a vague recollection of doing rolling like a ball, an exercise that was like rolling like a ball when I was little. I don't know if that came into my gym teacher was a soccer coach, and so I don't know if that was part of soccer training back then. If there were some Pilates exercises. I mean, that's
Listen,
way earlier than.
all the Russian soccer players all look like gymnasts. Their
Mm,
training program is very similar. All their, when I watch the Olympics and watch all these foreign players and whether they're, and you can see the South Americans are different from Brazil, and the Africans are different. You see someone like a
mhm.
Polish team or an Eastern European,
Right. Yeah,
you
they
know,
move different. Yeah.
they move different. Yeah, you see a Swedish soccer team, they move different, right?
It's
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 kind
almost
of
like watching a clash of personalities. You're like, oh, I think I know how this is going to go.
Well, I get a peek into it a little bit in my nephew's culture. He's a Nordic ski
Right.
jumper for the U.S. ski team, and so I
Mhm.
get to see how the Germans, when they come on, they're like all in
Mm,
line, uniform. It's like,
right.
and there's your Joseph Pilates influence right there. He was kind of systematic, very
Mm,
Germanic kind of thing, and I think even in his day, he had trouble with the English, so there was a lot of lost in translation. So he just made you
sure.
do it. That didn't mean
Right.
you understood it,
Yeah.
you see. And then there's some things like the fascial things and the foot correctors and things like that that, when rediscovered, it reinvigorates your passion for this method. and
Hmm.
and all along, I mean, sum it up is basically we're here to help people. If you're a teacher, if you're want to use it like a personal information device like I have for 40 years, I
Right.
rarely teach Pilates now. I'd love to teach
Hmm.
more. I think my passion would be to teach teachers more,
Hmm.
but with me, I'm in New York in my practice, I followed my yoga teacher into private practice in New York City.
Mm,
The model for Pilates teachers, you just can't afford to be a Pilates teacher in today's world, and
hmm.
especially in New York at the prices they were paying you. It's a great segue if you're 24-year-old and don't want to dance anymore, and now you
Hmm.
have another community to go earn money, that
Hmm.
kind of thing. But I had to go into private practice, and I had to be Pilates competitor.
Mm,
As from my experience, I had to be a Pilates Studios competitor.
hmm.
You see what I
Yeah.
mean? And so that was my experience. Okay, these are my experiences. This is what happened to me. And so for the last 21 years in Manhattan, I developed a concierge practice that was all private.
Hmm.
Okay, it wasn't a studio practice. And I was called to help people go into their homes and help them. And I had to get results
Hmm.
because 99% of these people were all in pain.
Right.
Okay, so for the last 20 years, I specialized getting people out of pain. I was like a physical therapist,
Mm,
and I've had that experience, and now I don't want to do that anymore. I want to teach people because I've had some great success in doing that. Does that make
hmm.
sense? And
Yeah, it's
now
almost
I've
like
come
you're.
back and inform people like, oh, this is a great way to do this, try
Yeah.
to
Well,
thing.
it's like your teaching has followed your personal practice trajectory, like you had mentioned, the private, the community, and the at
Right.
home. So you've got like, it's kind of like you had the private and now you want to do the community again.
Yeah. So when you experience that, you see the full spectrum of a 40-year practice,
Hmm.
and so all the information that comes out is just like, try this,
Yeah,
experience this.
right,
If you're having trouble in this exercise, do it more, right?
right.
Ramona used to say to me, like, and I hate to use this statement, but if you had a question and you could, she'd make you do the exercise, she'd make you do your question. And if you couldn't do it, she'd simply look at you and say, you need to do better, or you're not strong enough
I like that.
to answer your question.
Yeah.
And when you get strong enough, you'll answer your question. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that.
Right. Well,
Everybody's, we've gotten into this adult babysitting model and these
yeah,
personal training programs and weight training and like this. And it's like you're babying someone through their development, you
yeah.
know? And so, anyways, I lost my train of thought, but
Yeah, well, the thought that comes to my mind, and we can wrap up pretty soon because I don't want to take up too much of your time. The
yeah.
thought that comes to mind is like when you mentioned that Joseph Pilates, his English was not very good, but when you're describing Romana, it sounds like she didn't use a lot of words either to answer questions.
See, and this is
And
another
so,
misconception when people say, Ramona taught me this, Ramona taught me this. You may have had an experience with her, and this is my experience,
right,
okay?
right, yeah,
So she didn't teach people how to roll up. She just said, reach back, bend forward. Now get the towel